you remember what your fastest average time per mile was on any of the runs that you set records on? Or your fastest run?
I think I have the fastest marathon off the bike with the 2:34 something. That was at Ironman Texas in 2019.
What does that break down to per mile?
5:51.
Man.
It's just a learning. There's a lot to learn, and it's a tactical race. There's a lot of mistakes that you can make, and to perform, basically it's who can perform 8 hours without making those mistakes, and some of those mistakes can be pretty devastating on race day.
So were there like some legitimate fucking ruffled feathers, the fact that you show up and the first time nobody's heard of you as an amateur, you qualify?
I mean, at a lot of these races, no one's really, I had no idea. I didn't know what Kona was. I didn't know what the world champion, I didn't really know what it meant. On the run, I kind of have to be reliant on the course, and so I look forward to the Coke, the glass of Coke that I can get down every mile.
No shit.
Yep.
Like leaded regular fucking Coke, huh?
Coca-Cola, yep.
Really? With the coaching business, do you ever fuck with your clients and when they say, hey, I'm having trouble with this, you just say, just go faster? Welcome to Mic Drop, the podcast where relevancy is irrelevant and we don't give a shit about your feelings. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, it's both an honor and a pleasure to welcome my next guest and fellow Iowa guy to the podcast. He is a 5-time Ironman triathlon champion. He's set numerous course records and has 3 North American championship titles. He's got a doctorate in exercise science, doctor. He's the owner of MH Racing, which offers customized training plans to his clients to achieve what I'm going to call world-class results. He's circumvented the globe more times than Superman, and his balls are permanently numb from riding a bike so damn long. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the stage, Matt Hanson.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'm really interested to get into kind of the meat and potatoes of, a lot of the mentality and mindset behind what it takes to prepare, for races and things of that level. Not so in the weeds to probably a lot of the episodes you've been on where you're getting, really deep into training acumen and things like that, but more kind of a broad spectrum for, your layman that doesn't know shit about triathlons other than that there's 3 of something in there. I'd like to take a quick second to shout out and thank our sponsor for today's podcast, Origin Labs and Jocko Fuel. Jocko Fuel is a great product. He's got a ton of products actually within the Jocko Fuel line. The guests and I enjoy them on the show. And outside, I take a lot of the supplements. I've got some of the Origin Lab jeans, boots, gis, and it's just all around American industry. They do a fantastic job really re-revolutionizing American industry from start to finish. It's all American made, all American sourced. Everything start to finish is made right there in-house, and they really do a phenomenal job creating the products and fulfilling the whole ball of wax. They've been a huge supporter of the Mic Drop podcast for a while now, and I really can't thank Jocko Fuel and Origin Labs enough for the job that they do for us. And so thank you to you guys. I'd also like to say thank you to our other sponsor, Resilience Premium CBD. Resilience is excited to offer all Mic Drop listeners a 20% off discount on all products for 2 weeks from when this podcast is live using the discount code MICDROP at checkout. That's 2 words, MICDROP at checkout. I'd also like to say that Resilience is a great company that works in conjunction with Trico CBD, and all military veterans and first responders receive 35% off. Yes, that's 35% off for all military veterans and first responders, and that's through the Military and First Responders program. You just have to sign up at resilientcbd.com/military first responders discount. In terms of about Resilience, generally speaking, it's a premium CBD that I use. Again, it works in conjunction with the Tricos brand for the everyday athlete. That's www.resilientcbd.com. And Resilience was really born with the founders who are military veterans as well, personally experienced the effects and impact that CBD had on their own mental and physical obstacles. Their focus was sharper, mental stress was calmed, fitness stamina increased, and their bodies felt less pain, inflammation after super intense workouts. A lot of times most people and people are able to either wean off entirely or significantly reduce pain management therapy. This is a shared vision among the founders that this incredible supplement had not only changed their lives, but had the power to provide unbelievable benefits to family, friends, athletes, fellow veterans, and ultimately the entire fitness community. So big shout out to Resilience for their product as well as the Trico stuff. We sure appreciate their support. Starting off with the lightning round, what's the best thing about Iowa?
The sweet corn.
All right. I can't argue.
Sweet corn season now.
Yeah,
we have it 3-4 times a week.
Yeah. You can't beat it. You eating like nine years per time or what?
You don't want to be eating so much that you're seeing it when you wake up in the morning.
That's for detasseling season.
Yeah.
Have you ever shit yourself while racing?
I haven't, fortunately. No.
Really? I'm curious about that and a lot of other weird questions that I think a lot of people have about racing for 8-9 hours or, 7 and change if you're, at that level. But still, that's a long fucking time to go. I want to talk about, food and going to the bathroom and crashes and weird shit like that. But have you ever been like, especially on the bike, like, or running and like you're by somebody or behind somebody and they just fucking blow out? I mean, have you seen shit?
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, more than you'd think.
Yeah, 'cause you don't ever see that on TV, strangely enough.
Yeah, they try to avoid that.
Yeah,
kind of dismays the viewers a bit, I think.
I think they should fucking focus on it, honestly. But I think people would love to know. I mean, I know I would. I'm kind of a sick fuck that way, but to me, it's interesting. What's your favorite thing to eat while you're racing?
Oh, while I'm racing, I typically do all fluids. So I've on the bike, I take in all First Endurance products. They've been a long-time sponsor of mine. On the run, I kind of have to be reliant on the course, and so I look forward to the Coke, the glass of Coke that I can get down every mile.
No shit.
Yep.
Like leaded regular fucking Coke, huh?
Coca-Cola. Yep.
Really? Is that something that a lot of people do, or?
Yeah. I mean, it's got sodium, it's got calories, it's a different form of sugar, which you don't want to bore too much with the science, but you want to switch sugars at some point to just let the stomach kind of have a different path of digestion. And then caffeine numbs pain, so that's always good.
Good old fucking Coca-Cola. Yeah, I mean, especially if it was the original formula with cocaine in it, you guys all dialed in.
That's frowned upon these days.
Yeah.
Might have a little issue with the doping control after the race, but
fail the piss test afterwards.
Yeah, that's no good.
Yeah. What's the biggest misconception that your average person has about Ironman specific?
Tough question. There's a lot of misconceptions about it. One is that you can't do it. I think my wife is a great example of that. I remember I was in Cozumel and she texted me, like, hey, I want to do an Ironman in, a year from now, and hadn't done any triathlons. She prepped for it and did it. And so I think that's the biggest thing is the fear factor.
I suppose it's like with anything is that, a major accomplishment starts, with the first step, and it's one step at a time. And it's
exactly
a gradual increase. What's the shittiest race ever in terms of just the conditions that you were in?
Cozumel. The wind was awful. It always is there. And you get into the backside of the course. I had just come off of a broken wrist, and so I hadn't swam in 6 weeks, so I wasn't prepped to race. I shouldn't have been on the start line, but that was a younger version of myself that thought I could do anything.
Yeah.
And so just the heat, humidity, and I just wasn't there physically prepared, mentally wasn't ready. So that was a rough one.
Yeah. On the transverse, what's the most positively remembered race experience you have?
I've got great memories on the Ironman Texas course down in the Woodlands just north of Houston. That's where I earned my pro card. All 3 North American championships were there. Set a couple records there. Just good memories there.
What time of year was that?
It's used to be in May, then it moved to April.
Yeah, just cool it down a little bit.
Yeah, I mean the first time I was there, the first couple times I was there, up through 15, it was in May, and it makes a big difference. You can still catch a hot day in April, but and it's typically a little bit more humid, but it's been 3 out of 4, I think, in April have been much cooler.
Yeah. So with the courses, is that something like golf courses or racetracks where, it's just some people just fucking nail this course better than others?
Yeah, for sure. And that's part of what we do as a pro is we have to, scout the course and find ones that suit our needs. I've always been a runner, I guess, in the sport, so flat courses suit me really well. And I'm not going to perform my best typically in ocean swims.
Yeah.
So Texas has been just a good fit for me. Plus it's for me coming in Iowa, I'm training all winter indoors on the trainer, and that helps prepare you for a flat, windy bike course. So
yeah, right on. What do you hate, who do you hate in the industry? Like, you got to dime somebody out here.
I got to dime somebody out. We have some friendly rivals. There's always that guy that you hate to get beat by, and there's a guy in Chicago, Andrew Starkowitz, who we have some friendly banter going on, and he typically beats me in the halves, and I typically beat him in the fulls. I think we've gotten each other in each other's discipline once, but every other time that holds true.
Is there similarly in the industry, like what do you hate about the industry?
It's a tough way to make a living. If you want big dollars, this pro sport is not it. I think there's a professional triathlete organization, kind of a union for lack of a better term, that's trying to help move that forward, but we got a ways to go as a profession.
Yeah. Are you a gun guy? If so, what do you carry?
I am not.
At all?
No.
Don't own a single gun?
Don't own a single gun. No. Am I the first person on this podcast that can say that?
I don't ask everybody that, but I'd say to think back of everybody I've had on, I can't think of anybody. Well, let me take that back. I don't think for sure. I don't think Erica Jane carries a gun. I mean, she lives in California. She, I'm sure, has one, or there's probably one in her house. But that's off the top of my head. That's what I would think in terms of people that probably don't have them, or if they do, they don't carry them for sure. But just curious. It's something I do ask a lot of people, but I won't get into the politics of it. But,
no worries.
In terms of your morning routine, outside of the actual, when you're preparing for a race, what does kind of a normal morning routine consist of for you from the time you get up, the first couple hours?
Typically I get up, I grab a coffee and a banana, and I'm in the pool within about 20 minutes of waking up. If volume's light, if it's starting to get a little bit heavier, I get up a little bit earlier. So just let the body wake up a little bit more, sit in Normatec boots, which are something that I use for recovery. Just help get the blood flowing a little bit while I wake up a little bit. But yeah, typically the pool is under normal times, I'm in the water at 6 a.m.
And is that does that not change then if you are actually actively preparing for a specific race? Do you still swim right away?
Yeah, swim's always the first. For me in Iowa, that's mainly by availability. The pool in Storm Lake is open about 6 a.m. to 7:20 is the only time I really have available for lap swim, so I have to be there at 6 a.m.
That's interesting.
But for me, that's always been kind of the low-hanging fruit, and so that's the one that I want to do first because it's the one that's kind of in highest priority in my training.
I mean, does the prospect, whether it's for you or for any other athletes, do you know, in terms of like the endless pool, putting it in your house, something? I mean, I grew up swimming, competitively from 5 until I graduated, but I've never been in one. I don't know how, authentic the experience is by comparison. Maybe it's like a treadmill to being on the road, but Has that, been a consideration? Do you know if there are many athletes that actually do shit like that?
Yeah, for sure. Definitely something we especially looked into with this whole COVID thing, shutting down pools for quite some time. I mean, the cost on those is up in the 40 grand range.
Oh,
so
sure.
yeah, they're not cheap. And then there's upkeep, and it has to be indoors if it's in Iowa, because you don't want to be swimming at that in the winter. But there's a number of athletes that have them. There's a couple companies that do. It changes things a little bit. Your hips get forced down, so you're kind of swimming uphill, which for me is normal. So I don't want to reinforce that.
It already
habit.
feels that way.
Yeah. But it's definitely something I would consider if I can make it work.
Yeah. Right on. All right. So one thing on your what you eat and digest, I guess. How big of a role? I know from muscle building and just overall weight. It's counterproductive to have really any more muscle tissue on you than you absolutely need. Having said that, protein intake and not taking in anything other than, carbs and caffeine basically first thing in the morning, and then doing a workout based off of that in terms of your fuel. What is the thought process behind that? And do most people do that for that reason, is they don't want any more muscle than absolutely possible for the weight, or what?
No, for me, it's more of I can't swim with anything in my stomach and feel really good. So that's, I typically eat up until the point that I go to bed, which is not typically the, nutrition recommended or nutritionist recommended, but, I'm typically trying to consume about 5,000 to 7,000 calories a day, depending on where the training's at. And so it's if you're not, really wanting to have a lot before a workout, you have to kind of get in when you can. But, my biggest problem, especially during the summer, is keeping weight on. And that's what I'm more mindful of, is trying to make sure that I'm not going down in weight too much, especially preparing for a long course race, which you'd think being lighter is a little bit better because you got to carry it around for 8 hours. But really, if you start to get too light, then your reserves kind of go away.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I would imagine that, like with most things, there's a happy medium power-wise too, right? Is that too big is detrimental, but so is too small. But of that 5,000 to 7,000 calories, what does that breakdown look like in terms of fat, carbs, and protein?
It's about 60, 20, 20. So a lot of carbs. There's people that will say that the low carb way is the way to go. That's not for me.
That's got to depend on the person, right?
It does. Their digestive systems and a number of other things.
Yeah. In terms of what you actually take in, can you give me like a sample? What that 5,000 to 7,000 calories looks like in a day? Like what does that look like?
Yeah, at least 1,000, if not 2,000, is going to be in First Endurance Sports Nutrition during the workouts themselves, or in the recovery blend that I take right afterwards.
Is that a shameless plug?
Yeah, of course. But then, beyond that, I grew up on a beef farm, and so.
Are you Dwight Schrute fucking 2.0 or what? You're a beet farmer?
Beef.
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 Right.
Yes.
You had me excited. I was going back to the office days.
Oh no.
They said beet.
No, beef. Yeah. So I usually have a side of beef in the freezer downstairs.
That's awesome.
Get it from my grandpa's. Well, uncle has it now. So that, and then we have a garden in the summer, a couple fruit trees. So we try to get a lot of that. But really, it's a seafood, eat food diet. I don't really avoid anything. I'm not afraid to eat a donut or drink a can of pop or soda or whatever people call it these days.
Pop, I love it.
Yeah.
Nobody calls it that down here. I certainly grew up calling it that.
Is everything Coke down here, or is it soda?
Most of the time people say soda.
Oh, okay.
But, which, is the same way in California. So I've kind of transferred over to soda, I guess. But so most of it is from either your garden, the fruit trees, the beef that your uncle raised. Outside of that, you said you eat, all the way up until bedtime. Is there something that you specifically take before you go to bed so that you're, working on recovery or anything like that? Or
ice cream?
No sugar. I'm surprised with the sugar. It just as, in terms, I know you need the calories and you need energy. And when you're, expending energy at that level. I mean, I've been at points in my life doing that where, yeah, it was like you just got whatever the fuck you could because you felt like if you didn't, you weren't going to stay alive. But as you get older, I mean, and I think as research gets a little more refined, and I'm not going to say we necessarily know more, it seems like, every 10 years it's a complete fucking opposite of what they were saying 10 years ago. Having said that, I think there's enough science probably behind how fucking terrible sugar is for so many things in your body that from a performance athlete standpoint, whether it's inflammation, hammering the shit out of your adrenals, fucking with your pancreas and insulin and things like that, is that would be, maybe a little counterproductive. But what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I won't be able to do this, my whole life. Like once I'm going to have to change things majorly as soon as this sport isn't what I'm doing as a profession. But right now, it's usually the driving factor is again maintaining body weight. When I was in college and wrestling, and I was trying to, I had to work really hard to get down to 141, and now at the end of a 3-4 hour bike ride, I'm there naturally and trying to prevent that. So it kind of came from, and I cut weight, so I've been hungry for long periods of time, so I'm never doing that again.
Yeah. So it sounds like maybe wrestlers should do triathlons to fucking
there you go.
Make weight, maybe. Huh? It may help with their conditioning too. I don't know, but all right. So childhood, in terms of where you grew up, I know you were born in Minnesota. Yep. At what point did you move to Iowa?
I went to Iowa I went to Buena Vista University for undergraduate, and so that's in Storm Lake, Iowa. So I went there in 2004, graduated there in 2007. I was gone for a semester when I started my master's, and then they gave me a call back and basically said, we need you to start tomorrow if you can show up here as kind of an emergency hire situation. So started back up at the university again, working as an athletic trainer at the start while I was finishing up my master's, and then went straight to doing that while I was finishing my doctorate, moved into teaching a little bit more. And then when I finished my doctorate, I was on the tenure track and teaching full time.
So taking a couple steps back, in terms of your childhood, I'm curious about family dynamic, siblings, parents, sports you played, competitive nature, kind of what your childhood experience was like. I know you're 6 or 7 years younger than I am, but but growing up in the Midwest in the 80s, basically, 80s, 90s, I'm curious what that experience was like, how it differs or is similar to mine, but mostly just what that family dynamic was like and what ultimately led you to kind of get into this.
Yeah, I've always been competitive, especially with my siblings at a young age. I have an older brother, younger sister. Both my mom and dad were always there at everything that we did.
Were they athletes growing up?
Yeah, my dad wrestled in college, so he was my role model. He would still run, 5Ks, 10Ks. That's what kind of got me started running. He would come home from work and go for a run and be nice enough to, take me on his warm up with him. And by, time 5th, 6th, 7th grade rolls around, we would go together. And by the time 8th grade rolls around, I would drop him off after my warm up and go off.
The tables turn.
Yeah, a little bit. But and then he was always involved. Like I started wrestling at age 5, and he was always my, coach up through elementary school. And then, was just always there when it became more in high school.
Was your older brother similar in terms of wrestling and running?
Nope, not at all. He ran a little bit, but he was a basketball and golfer. Yeah. That was his thing. My sister was volleyball, basketball, and then she ran track as well. But we were an active family, and
Do they, your siblings now, do they have any involvement in just normal jobs? Do they have any involvement in anything athletic that way?
Yeah, I mean, my sister is a personal trainer and works at a club, and then she also she does some Ironman racing now as well. Like, so that's been a good way for the two of us to kind of reconnect after college. We fought like cats and dogs when we were kids because we're the same person. We're both competitive, and that kind of clashed. She's quite a bit younger than me, and we actually, we moved apart, and that kind of brought us together a little bit.
Yeah, well, that's cool. I'm curious about wrestling because being from Iowa, I didn't wrestle. My dad did, and it was huge, especially in the '80s with Iowa being so dominant. Was your athletic ability as it relates to wrestling? Would you consider pretty high, or I mean, did you do well with it, or?
Yeah, it was okay. I mean, it was something I loved and that I was gonna work hard towards. I mean, I put myself to month-long camps in the summer all through high school.
Did you do the J-Rob camp?
I did.
No shit.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yep. So I mean, that was. And I worked 2 months basically to afford that month camp, so paid for it myself because I felt like I would get the most out of it that way.
That's awesome.
That's actually what led me to triathlon long term. Was in that J-Rod camp, they always have you set a list of 50 goals for the next 10 years, and I think number 48 was to do an Ironman triathlon. And
really?
Yeah. So when I was 16, the list of goals that I made then kind of indirectly pushed me to where I am now.
Yeah. One of my best friends, his 2 kids are wrestlers. His daughter just won a state championship as a senior in Florida. I suspect his son probably will do the same senior year maybe, but they've both been to J-Rob a couple of times. It was canceled this year because of fucking Corona, but the things that they say about that, their entire family talk about it, and it's really neat to hear how big of a lifelong impact that something like that has.
For sure. Funny story. I actually Jay's wife does Ironmans.
Really?
And they were at Boulder, Colorado, and his wife won his age group, and he came up to me, and I won the race there.
Oh, nice.
He came up to me afterwards like, I bet you don't remember who I am. I said, Jay, I can see your knees from a mile away. I know exactly who you are.
You look like a bag of soccer balls.
Exactly.
Yeah.
27 knee surgeries.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. I actually saw him the only time I've ever met him, and it was for about 8 seconds. Was actually at while I was a SEAL instructor. He came out for a Hell Week breakout, and there's a group of VIPs. I don't know if they even do it anymore, but every Hell Week we would have a group of anywhere from 15 to 25 or so people from fucking all over. I mean, you get Phil Jackson, the NBA coach. I mean, like just every time you'd see somebody be like, holy shit, it's so and so or whatever. But there was one breakout, and the interesting thing, it was when my parents came out. For it, I managed to get them in that group, and he was there. And my dad, growing up wrestling with Dan Gable in high school and whatever, it was neat to see them interact and what have you. But hell of a legendary camp and a really neat experience. Would you say that going through that was life altering?
Yeah, I mean, my parents taught me goal setting, but the importance of that was really reinforced through that camp. And it just, the work ethic that you have to have, like I said, I grew up on a farm. I worked for my dad. I worked for my uncle at the truck shop. So I had some really strong male influences who taught me how to work. But I guess that camp definitely taught me how to use that in a different way.
Yeah. To me, stuff like that is necessary for young kids to go through. I think I see it with mine. My oldest is actually in wrestling, and it's just awesome to see the impact that being with, I can say shit till I'm blue in the face, but it's like, well, okay, Dad, to a certain extent. I mean, there's a lot of neat lessons learned that she adheres to, but to me, there's just something different about when there's a group of their peers that they're competing with and learning from, and watching other kids their own age push themselves. And the impact that has, and it's just to me it is life changing. For any parents listening out there, get your fucking kids in some team sports that are hard. That it's both an individual and a team thing that they learn to set goals and push themselves and things like that. I think it's a wonderful way to bridge that gap between parenting and getting kids out in the real world. But in high school, did you make it to state wrestling? Did you? Yeah,
I made it to state 3 times wrestling, 2 times cross country, 2 times track.
God damn. What was the kind of the biggest thing in high school that that sticks out as being from an accomplishment standpoint in any sport or even academic for that matter, that kind of resonates with you?
So Minnesota has this AAA award, arts, academics, and athletics, and basically it kind of goes to the most well-rounded individual. And and I was able to win that my senior year, which was
Oh, nice. That's a statewide thing.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
That's
And
cool.
I was a finalist in the high school Heisman.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right. So as you get ready to, you graduate high school, you get ready to kind of go out on your own, you go to college. Were you training for Ironman specific or for triathlon rather specific during that time, or were you just kind of training to train?
No, I went to college to wrestle. So I went down to BV. The reason I went there is because I could be an athletic training major and still wrestle. A lot of times you have to be at so many practices and things like that with the major that you can't do a sport, but that college allowed me to do it. And so that's where I went and wrestled my freshman year there. Ended up dislocating my hip at the conference tournament freshman year, and that was the end of my wrestling career.
Really?
Yeah.
Was it so it was significant enough to completely?
Yeah, I mean, it's still relatively unstable.
Really?
Like if I do pull-ups, I can barely do one now, but no. But if I do pull-ups, that can just slide out.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh shit. Is there a surgical procedure that can help with that, or is it just kind of is?
Yeah, I mean, the doc that I saw at the time said you can look forward to a hip replacement in your mid-40s, but until then, I'm going to do what I can.
Yeah. So in thinking, and I'm assuming maybe the listener is kind of in the same frame of mind. Has that not been a pretty negative impact in terms of racing? So you can still race.
Yeah, as long as I stay forward and backwards, all's fine. If I try
linear.
Yeah, in the sagittal plane, I'm happy.
Yeah, I gotcha. All right, so from then, as soon as you get injured, where was your head at that point? Was it kind of like, well, fuck, now what? Or did you say, well, I'm going to go do this now?
I was
drifting.
Yeah, definitely some drifting. I had never touched alcohol in my life up until the day that the
fucking
doctor
boozing it up, Matt.
I might have had some bad influences around me that why not, right? And I got to the point where I was working out twice a day. At the end of the season, I was already planning on having shoulder surgery. So, I'm on crutches. As soon as I can get off the crutches, I had shoulder surgery. So I went, 3 months pretty banged up, and it was to the point where like I was working out twice a day, and now it was literally taken away from me. And I pretty quickly realized that I needed to move, at least to feel good about myself. So I got to the point where I would go to the indoor track and time myself to crutch a mile. And, that was just, I had to do something.
There's that goal setting.
Yeah.
Right?
Just have to move. And, my arms were raw and yeah.
Was there a light switch moment for you where it transferred from, okay, step one is I got to move, I got to do something. At what point was that light switch on where it was like, triathlon is what I want to do?
Triathlon came in on my 25th birthday. I carried that list of 50 goals around in my pocket for 10 years. And so I'd take it out on my birthday, look at it and say, what can I go after this year? And
did you ever pull it out and you're like, no, nah, fuck that.
Well,
nah.
Some of these are like, I was 16, right? Like, I think one of the things I wanted to own a monkey. I thought I could be debt free by 26. I mean, what
I want a badass car stereo.
Own a Camaro. Yeah, it still hasn't happened. But I think I ended up getting about 44 of them.
Oh, sure.
And I still remember the ones that I didn't.
There's still time to get a monkey, Matt.
Yeah, but that 10-year time frame ran out. But so I was 25, and I looked at the sheet and like, well, I guess I better learn how to swim. And so I had no bike. I had never rode a road bike before. And so I bought, I'm in grad school at the time, bought one off of eBay.
Oh, shit.
And I had swam a little bit as a kid, nothing super competitive or anything like that. But, I knew the basics. But, my first goal was to be able to swim 500, and I had to do 2.4 miles, right? Yeah. And so it was really starting from scratch on the swim and the bike. And the nice thing was this was when I was up working on my master's, and I was pretty much alone. I didn't know anybody up there at the time, and so I had nothing but time.
Yeah, to me this is where it turns into really fascinating to me, because growing up swimming, I know all sports there's an element of, if you didn't grow up doing it, you're way behind the power curve. I think swimming is one of those that is near the top or at the top of the list for that being applicable. So for you to basically, it sounds like your experience in terms of swimming is you could keep yourself from drowning.
Pretty much.
And then now getting to the point where you're winning North American national or, continent championships, where you've got to swim almost 2.5 miles. That's fucking remarkable to me.
Yeah, I have what's called adult onset swimming syndrome.
Yeah, no shit.
There's a name for it in triathlon, and it's easy to pick us out.
Yeah.
It's definitely where I've had to put the most amount of work in, especially early in my career. And, thankfully I ran into a guy when I raced Ironman Texas the first time. Afterwards, he was just talking to me. I started way in the back out of the water and worked my way up as an age grouper and ended up, I think, second amateur overall in the race. And he talked to me afterwards, like, you'd be a lot faster if you fix your swim.
Yeah.
Just blunt like that, so I ended up started working with him, Tim Floyd, down in the Woodlands, and swam with his, with his guidance. And I would go over Christmas break. I would go down there and we'd swim 2-3 times a day for about an hour and 15 minutes. And that's, I did that for 2 years. And that's when I kind of got to the point where I was able to sit in the pack.
Yeah. For me, and again, having grown up swimming, everything is technique, but there's so many nuances in swimming with stroke efficiency and your ability to move water and the whole, pressing your buoy, staying flat, type of approach, and the mechanics that go into being a truly proficient and world-class level swimmer. There's got to be, a fair amount of genetics that play a role in that too, because like American Idol, like there's a lot of people that you just can't fucking sing, sweetheart. I'm sorry. It's kind of that way with all sports for that matter, but swimming especially, again, because it's so technical. Again, just I think it speaks volumes to genetics and drive and everything else for you to be able to go from not being able to swim basically to that level. But how many years would you say it took from the time you decided that you wanted to do triathlon to where you were legitimately competitive?
I did my first real triathlon. I did a couple, like one with an indoor swim, and then you go outside kind of thing. And it's Iowa that you can't in May, you can't be outside in the lake.
Yeah. Well, not with that attitude. You can't.
Yeah, I did get in there this spring a couple times. I had to have booties and gloves, but I was desperate.
Yeah.
So 2011 was my first Ironman triathlon at Coeur d'Alene, and I planned on it being one and done.
Yeah.
But I ended up qualifying for the World Championships as an amateur. And
first fucking crack at it.
Yeah, that makes some people mad.
It doesn't really happen normally, right?
Not typically, and it happened a bit by. I had a good run on the day for sure, but my bike was not fast, and my swim was not fast. But my bike was about 10 minutes faster than anybody else on the day.
No shit.
For the amateurs. And so it was that's kind of where I figured out that, I think I found maybe something that would be a hobby.
Yeah. So were there like some legitimate fucking ruffled feathers, the fact that you show up and the first time nobody's heard of you as an amateur, you qualify?
At a lot of these races, no one's really, I didn't do any. I had no idea. I didn't know what Kona was. I didn't know what the world champ. I didn't really know what it meant. I was like, oh, cool. I should probably go. I hadn't done my homework. I hadn't respected the sport, and so there's people that try their entire lives to get that opportunity, and I was able to earn it. My first shot, which I definitely took for granted, and didn't realize how much so at the time.
Yeah, which inherently is going to piss some of the older people off, right?
Probably, yeah.
So from that point, once you said, okay, how many years was that from the time you decided, well, maybe I should do triathlon? That was what, 6 years, 5 years?
So I competed as an amateur from 2011 to 2013. And then
from the time that you decided, where you are crutching a mile, and you decide.
So that would have been 6 years.
6 years, okay. So from not being able to swim, basically, and coming off a surgery, 6 years later, you're qualifying for the World Championships.
Yeah. I didn't start swimming until I was 25.
Yeah. God, that's crazy. How big of a role does equipment play? And I want to kind of preface that with, I play guitar. I don't really golf, but I've golfed enough, to know that when there's a lot of sports, and I'll use guitar and golf as examples, is that, the world-class athletes can pick up they can go to play it against, Tiger Woods could go to play it against sports and pick up a fucked up, shitty, broke pair of clubs and kick everybody's ass still with them. Jimi Hendrix could pick up, the $30 pawn shop, busted ass Stratocaster and put on a concert that'd blow your fucking mind. Is there an element of that to a certain extent with triathlon? Obviously, you can't be riding a Schwinn 1-speed out there and expect to kick everybody's ass. But is there some of that to it?
Yeah, I mean, triathlon's a sport where money can buy speed, and technology has come a long way, especially on the bike. The wetsuits and swim skins make a little bit of a difference for sure. A lot of that's just comfort, being able to move your shoulders and things like that. But the aerodynamics, I spent 2 days in the wind tunnel in the UK last winter, and just the amount of free speed that you can find by changing your helmet and just moving your hands around and things like that. It does definitely make a big deal.
Yeah. So the bike is the most prominent where equipment plays the biggest role.
Yeah, for sure.
In terms of the run, I am curious, like shoe-wise, were there ever any racers that were fucking barefoot or wearing like the Vibrams, or is that you want the Hoka fucking pillow soft shoes or everything in between? Or?
Yeah, pretty much everything in between. The longer races, you don't see too many people running barefoot. You see a few that are running in the middle, like the Vibram Zero Drop or something like that. But I've used On Running for the last since 2014, I think.
How fast do you go through a pair of running shoes?
Typically, I use a pair of race shoes for 3 races. Always a new pair for an Ironman, and then I'll use them for a few halves afterwards. Training-wise, about 500 to 600 miles. I'm putting in 60 miles a week on average, probably. So
you get 2 months out of a pair of shoes? I mean, do they get to the point where you're like, I need a new pair of fucking shoes? Like you can feel it that quick when you put them on? Or?
Yeah, I mean, you can, definitely. And you rotate that, a little bit. I have shoes that I use for my long runs and then tempo runs.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. In terms of working while you were training and that 6-year period, what did that schedule kind of look like in terms of putting the time in and going to school and probably working a job or two and trying to train, like those 20-hour days or what?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty much. When I was working as an athletic trainer, it was pretty tough to get training in. I had the benefit of working at a university, so over lunch hour I could swim, which my office was literally a door away from the pool, so that made it definitely convenient there. But always work out over the lunch hour, and then the second workout was whenever I'd finish up on the day. Because I was doing morning treatments for the athletes, and then had at least one sports practice in the afternoon. And like in February where there's overlap and everybody's indoors, I'd be at a practice at 6 a.m. and then baseball loves to practice 9 to 11, so you can take them later at night. Yeah. And then so I'd have softball practice in the morning, wrestling practice in the afternoon, and then baseball practice in the evening. So it's just figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a hell of a schedule. I can only imagine that. I mean, I know at that age you can get away with under recovering more so as you get older.
Yeah, for sure.
I know when I was late teens, early 20s, and in my operational career in my 20s in the SEAL teams, like I think about that now, and I'm just flat out fucking jealous of what I could put my body through back then versus what I can now. But was there an element of because sleep is such an important component, especially with an endurance sport like that. Did you struggle with that, or did
for sure. It was those were tough. I probably wasn't especially in October and February where the sports were overlapping. I probably wasn't a very fun person to be around, I've learned that a little bit more now that when I start getting a little bit more irritable, for lack of a better word, I'm getting behind on sleep, and now I have the benefit of I can stick to a schedule and in bed at 10 every night, up at 5:40 or 5:30, so that's all right. But
so you're a 7.5 hour sleep guy. Is that because of the science behind it? Is that because I've had other guests on that were strength and conditioning coaches or performance based coaching and things like that, and that's at least lately has been kind of the running. You need at least 7.5 hours. Is that behind that? Or?
Yeah, I mean that's the ideal situation. I would love to be able to take naps. I've got the time to do it, but if I do, then I can't fall asleep at night. So this schedule is if I try to go to bed too early, I just sit there and stare at the ceiling. And if I don't fall asleep in 20 minutes, then I'm staring at the ceiling all night. And so this is kind of the schedule that just helps things work the best. I fall asleep, typically on the routine and get the best sleep. And it works for my wife.
Yeah.
So,
when you're getting ready for a race, like kind of, tapering down or getting close, does that sleep schedule change at all in terms of trying to get more? I mean, I know
your body does really weird things when you go from working out, 25, 30, 35 hours a week to 10 to 15, the last two weeks or week and a half leading into a race. And you just want to sleep all the time.
Yeah.
It's like you're in catch-up mode from all that you were doing before. And the hardest time to sleep is after your biggest training days because your body's just so sore.
Yeah.
But yeah, leading into a race, it's sometimes you got to get yourself up and just make yourself move around. Just otherwise you're sleeping way too much.
Yeah. So for those of you, and my apologies for not covering it sooner, but so the Ironman race is 2.4 mile swim, 112 mile bike, and a 26.2 mile run.
Correct.
So, and that's all in a fucking row. I am curious in terms of that tapering down or just training in general. I think a lot of people, when they hear that, they'd be like, holy shit. So do you get to where you're running an Ironman every fucking day to train? And I know the answer is no, but I think what surprises a lot of people, myself included, is kind of how much time and mileage you're spending in each of those disciplines per day, per week, whatever, and how small they are in comparison usually to the final race distance. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, in a normal build, I'll swim 5 to 6 times a week. If I do a sixth, it's a 30-minute open water swim on a Sunday after everything, just to try to help recover a little bit. And then, bike 5 times and run 5 times essentially. So yeah, about 4 to 5K for 4 of those swims. One will be about a 6K swim. So quite a bit longer so the swim we're swimming longer on a regular basis than the actual competition. Part of that's because that's my low-hanging fruit where I need to spend the most time. And then I'll do a bunch of 1-hour runs, so if I do, 5 runs in a week, 4 of them will be 1 hour, so about 10 miles, give or take, with intervals and things like that. And then a longer run on the weekend that, typically at the beginning of the build will be 15 and it'll go up to like 22 or 23 miles. And then bikes, that just varies. Some weeks I'll be lower with really high intensity. Other weeks I'll be, we did 1,000K in a week. I went up to Boulder with a crew last 2 weeks ago, and we just did 620 miles in a week, which is a lot of time on the bicycle. So that comment you made about the numb, yeah.
Yeah. I mountain bike a few days a week just around here where, there's a couple, small hills, they're big enough to get your legs and lungs burning, but it's mostly flat, but I just enjoy it. But I know, 45 minutes or an hour is usually about how long I go. And I vary how hard I go depending on, what's going on in the week, how well I've slept, what I did for a weight routine that day or what I'm going to do or whatever. But every fucking time, everything is completely numb, and I'm just like, Jesus Christ, that can't be good. But anyway, so in terms of the distances, I'm curious, obviously there's variance and you build up to longer distances, but it sounds like if you were to kind of, I guess the 2 questions I have, if you were to do like a collective mean average of this is, all totaled swim, bike, and run about what you're doing through the entire length of the workout, preparation for a race, what does that look like? Have you ever calculated that? And also what's the hardest, or like when you get to that peak workout, like what does that look like?
Yeah. So, the volume's going to build up through the build typically. And I've never added like the total, volume for an entire build. We kind of usually just look at it in a 1 week and then, how does that next week build off of the previous week? But we'll get up to well over 30 hours of training if you factor in strength training in there as well. The biggest workout that we typically do, So I'll do basically a swim in the morning, which would be like a race intensity, and then have a little break, and then I'll do about a 4.5 hour with the last 3.5 hours at race pace, and then go straight into about a 15-mile run. I typically do that once a build.
Yeah. So when you, I guess, are building up to that, I mean, what, in terms of your mindset, and this is where, I want to draw some parallels between, some military special operations and just other aspects of life, jiu-jitsu, whatever, and the mentality that it takes. Obviously, we'll talk about the race, but to me, the training is where you've got to really dig deep, right? Because it's day after day. It's the fucking grind. Nobody's watching. Nobody's cheering you on. There's no fucking cameras. Nobody gives a shit. Especially in Iowa, it's the middle of winter. Like, where are you drawing your motivation or discipline, when there is no motivation from?
Yeah, I mean, the phrase that I always go back to is know your why. You got to know why it's important, why you're there. That's short term and long term. Like, what's the overall big goals? What's the outcome goals that we want? And then how do we break that down into process goals? And really, I've done a much better job later in my career at just not really worrying about tomorrow. It's just wake up and say, what do I have to do to execute today, to the training that I have today, to the best of my ability. And, I drive my coaches bonkers sometimes because I have no idea what I have to do tomorrow. Like, I just worry about today. I'll look, the next, right before bed, I'll look, okay, what do I have tomorrow?
Yeah. Oh, shit, it's a day off. Sweet, I'm getting drunk.
Yeah, well, that doesn't happen very often. But
yeah. So to me, there's a huge parallel there with that mentality specific to what makes, I think, most guys successful going through SEAL training is exactly that. And I would take it maybe even back a step further, where it's not even what am I doing today, it's what am I doing right fucking now. In the Navy they call them evolutions, or in SEAL training they call them evolutions, which is just whatever the activity is that you're doing now, and that's really the one of the core benchmark principles, I think, for advice that I know I've given and that I even lived by in going through the training, where it was, we're doing log PT. Well, let's just get through fucking log PT. Like, if you sit there and think about the other 9 things that you're going to do that day that are all going to kick you square in the nuts the same way this is, it's daunting, it's overwhelming, and it's depressing, and it ruins most people's mentalities. And especially when you think, and then that's going to happen tomorrow, and the next day, and the next day for 6.5 fucking months straight, is that's when people quit, because they're like, dude, fuck this, It's interesting that's something that you use. I am curious, do you find that is pretty common and prevalent amongst your peers in the competition circuit? And also, is that what you really focus on the teaching aspect of the business when you're coaching other athletes?
Yeah, I don't know that I've ever ran across another athlete that does it that way, and I definitely didn't always. When I was first starting, and up through probably about 2016, I was spending way too much time thinking about my training, and it became obsessive. Like, I was at night, I would be talking with my coach and ignoring my wife who's sitting right next to me, and it just got to be to the point where it wasn't fun. And, I was putting a lot of result-based pressure on myself because, up and, when I won the first North American Championships, I was a professor still. So I was working full-time, and it was this, I was racing as a pro, but it was a quasi-pro. It was a hobby that I got to make a little, perform really well and make a little money at. But then after I won that first North American Championship, I left my job as a professor. I was 6 months from tenure, and just said, I need to chase this dream. And that change, shortly after, that mentality shifted, and I started racing like crap. And I didn't have another good race for almost 18 months after that, where I felt that I went out and executed well. I got some decent results, but I didn't feel like I left everything out there. And I finally realized that it was a mindset. And I was spending too much time focusing on a result that was 6 months away, and not about what I need to do to prepare myself to get to the start line in the best pace. And that we talked about the Jay Robinson camp, and that kind of went back to that mindset that I just need to get through this swim and get through this bike.
So there's a couple of neat things with that I want to talk about. Obviously, we talked about the SEAL team correlation there, but there's actually a huge similarity in that mentality and being a successful dog trainer, which is now what I do for a living and have for a while now. Is that I see a lot of times where that derails a lot of dog owners and trainers is exactly that. Is that they're thinking about how far away they are from the finished product of where they're trying to get their dog, and they get frustrated, which the dog picks up on, and then they lose their patience. And when you lose your patience as a dog trainer, put the fucking dog up, because you're just going to ruin shit, and I struggle with that regularly, because it's when, just like with you, when it transfers from a hobby where you're doing it because you legitimately enjoy it to now where your fucking livelihood depends on it, and people are paying you for your results, is that adds an enormous amount of pressure that is very counterproductive, I think it's just a good lesson for everybody out there, is that no matter what you do for a living, is trying to look at it more that way. And one of the beautiful and unique things about dogs is that if there ever was a creature on the fucking planet that could teach us a lesson about living in the present, it's them.
Yep.
My favorite joke as it relates to that is, if you want to find out who loves you more, your wife or your dog, lock both of them in the trunk for 2 hours, and when you come pop the trunk open, who's happier to see you? That dog's gonna be ecstatic.
Yep.
Bro, where you been? And your wife's gonna slap the shit out of you. So, but it to me, it's neat to see the parallels between what you do now, even at a high level of competition, that I think a lot of people would find pretty foreign by comparison, but it isn't. The mentality required to be successful is the same as most things in life. One of the things, just from a curiosity standpoint, a little bit of a pivot, is that from a performance standpoint, do you remember what your fastest average time per mile was on any of the runs that you set records on? Or your fastest run?
I think I have the fastest marathon off the bike with the 2:34 something. That was at Ironman Texas in 2019.
What does that break down to per mile?
5:51.
Man, it's just crazy to even wrap your mind around that after a 2.5 mile swim, 112 mile bike, and then you run a marathon sub 6 for 26. That's remarkable.
Well, the last couple were a little slower than 26.
Yeah. Well, but on average, right?
The wheels came off a little bit, but that's all right.
Yeah. All right. So you're 35?
Yeah.
I am curious. One of the unique things also that I find interesting about Ironmans specifically, or triathlon, long distance triathlons, is that it's unlike most sports in that the age limitations on being in your prime actually suit a little bit older athlete.
For sure.
There's a sweet spot there, and I think you're probably right about in the middle of it. But whereas I'm for sure, I can tell you I'm past it. But I would love for you to talk about that a little bit. Is kind of the why. I don't really understand it, and I don't know if you can explain it to make an idiot like me understand it. But with pretty much every other sport, the mid to late teens to mid 20s, maybe late 20s, is really kind of that sweet spot window where you can recover the fastest, where you can get the strongest, where your body can take the most punishment and wake up the next day and do it again. Why do you suppose, or do you know why it's so different with endurance competition that way?
Yeah, there's a number of reasons. One, it takes a long time to develop a proper aerobic base, and a lot of guys, especially early in their career, are rushing it. So they're like myself. I did an Ironman off of 9 months of proper training, and that was just way too early. And so it just you can continually develop that aerobic capacity, especially the deeper you go in time wise. It just takes time to get there. And I think a big reason though as well is it just takes it takes time to find the right balance. Some guys find it early in their career, but a lot of people, the mentality that's driven into a lot of athletes early on is harder is always better, or more is always better, and that's not always the case. And a lot of times with in endurance sports, that mentality leads to injury, and that was kind of one of the biggest things that I had to unlearn from wrestling. Wrestling gave me so many gifts that I can bring forward, but one of the curses was I always wanted to be doing more or working harder. So if my coach said, run a 5:30, I was trying to run 5:15, and just always trying to beat the workout. and that's taken, my coaches finally beat that mentality out of me for the most part. But yeah, it's just a learning. There's a lot to learn, and it's a tactical race. There's a lot of mistakes that you can make, and to perform, basically it's who can perform 8 hours without making those mistakes. And some of those mistakes can be pretty devastating on race day.
Look, all I'm saying is when you say you have to be able to perform for 8 hours, you got the ladies' attention. I am curious. You talked about tactics and strategy, and that's something that, again, I think for most people that aren't into triathlons or whatever, they'd be curious. I know I am. Can you talk a little bit about strategy and the tactics and the chess game that takes place? I'm assuming pacing has a big role to play, but in terms of where you're at in packs and
Yep.
Some of it's going to depend on terrain, I'm sure. But can you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton that goes on, and every race is going to unfold a little bit differently. The thing that I've been working on the most is trying to figure out how hard to go in the first 300-400 meters on the swim, because you get about an 18% benefit if you're drafting in the swim. So and then they'll pack out. So if I pace it exactly right, I can make the first pack. If I don't, then I'm pulling everybody along in the second pack, and that's obviously not efficient. And so I want to be there, but I'm just not there very often. And I've got the speed. I just haven't figured out how to thread the needle. And you've got some guys that I could swim with or swim better than in a pool, but they are light years in front of me in the ocean, or especially if it's an ocean swim. So that that's the first 500 meters makes up so much of the race, and people just kind of ignore that so often. But then on the bike, you can't draft in a long course, so you have to stay at least 12 meters back, but there's still a little bit of a benefit from that. And if you stack 10 guys who are sitting 12 meters back, by the time you're legally sitting in the 10th spot, you're getting a pretty decent benefit because it compounds. And so it's just, you have to be always aware of, the gaps, because you can move back. If you go from 12 to 15 meters, somebody's slotting in. And so you can move back. And then if you get back too far, well, yeah, it's a little bit easier. But if a guy goes and attacks on the front, then you're screwed.
Just real quick, sorry to interrupt. Is that something you can feel? Let's say you're in front and there's 9 guys behind you. Can you feel them drafting off of you?
Not typically when you're behind. The only reason is because you hear the motos. That the motos are there to be draft marshals, and you get a penalty if you creep into the zone. But yeah, I mean, you can definitely feel the difference when you're behind.
Yeah, just less resistance across.
Yeah.
And then transitioning into the run, well, 2 things. One is the transitions. I know that there's an art to that too, right?
Yep.
Because you're going from taking a fucking wetsuit off and getting your shit ready for the bike. Is it, how much of that do you practice, and how much goes into all that?
Yeah, I mean, it starts to having the right equipment. It's definitely something you practice, especially for a 70 point or for the half Ironman races. It just those seconds make things very important, especially for the first transition, because that's when the packs are going to form on the bike. And so you'll have guys that will go out and just go as hard as they can for the first 10 minutes just to try to separate themselves and then settle in. And so all those little things definitely add up, and they make more and more of a difference for the transitions the shorter the race is.
Yeah. In terms of the kind of the logistics behind that, I know, like watching the Tour de France and big name races like that, like they've got, a whole fucking support staff that, has, 3 bikes per guy extra and 9 tires and whatever. Like if you're in a spot, like, are you at that level where if you're on the bike and you have a blowout, somebody comes up and fucking hooks you right up? Or
no, you better have a spare, and you better be able to change it pretty fast.
Yeah.
At some of the races, at the bigger races, they'll have a neutral support vehicle, but they won't, unless it's something you can't fix yourself. Or you have a really big name in the sport, then maybe you'll get lucky. But you got to be prepared to be fully supported from a mechanical side standpoint. Obviously, we have aid stations and things like that along the course where they'll hand every, I think on 12 to 15 miles on the bike, they hand off bottles and things like that. And then on the run, it's every mile.
Okay. And so I'm assuming you've had instances where you've had mechanical problems. It sounds like the bike is really the only one that can completely fuck you over, right?
Yeah.
Shy of the sole of your shoe coming off in a run or something like that.
Yeah, I usually breathe a bit of a sigh of relief as soon as I get off the bike, because now it's all on me. If something goes wrong, it's probably my fault, right? Yeah. And on the bike, you can, I've had a handlebar break in the middle of a race that led to a crash, and just I've had a number of flat tires in a race, and it happens. Yeah, it happens. Yeah, and it's racing.
Have you ever run into situations where there's interference from any of the spectators, like trying to fuck people over, like throwing jacks out or tripping people or shit like that?
Yeah, when I did Chattanooga in 2014, Chattanooga's right on the border, and the bike goes down into Georgia, and so I don't know what the county of Chattanooga is, but whatever county it is,
Chattanooga County sounds good.
We'll call it that. It gets the majority of the revenue, and Georgia had a lot of the road closures, and so a lot of people weren't happy about that. So they ended up a farmer went out and poured oil all over the road.
Oh shit.
Yeah, and we were the pro males are the first ones that come up to that, and then on the other side, right before the border, they threw tacks all over the road. So they weren't very happy, and that's the only time that I've had that specific thing. And every other time in Chattanooga, it's been a great experience, but that one was just a rough year for at least one guy.
No, that's a trip. In terms of just logistics across the board, can you talk about, once you're at a pro level, kind of what the team looks like and what all it takes to do a race? I think, to me, that's an impressive machine that exists at what it takes to have everything ready and kind of what that looks like.
Yeah, so I've got an overall coach, Julie Divins. Worked with her for 4 years, or 3 or 4 years now. It's been a really good fit. And then I brought on a bike coach as well. So Julie kind of says, this is the amount of stress that I get to have. And then my bike coach, he's from the UK. He fits in, the training base out of her, like, kind of overarching plan. And then I've got a strength coach as well. That I work with remotely primarily. He's in Boulder, so when I'm out in Boulder seeing Coach Julie, then he's here. And so I'll go out to Boulder typically 3 or 4 times a year, train with her group out there. She's got a huge number of really good athletes to train with. We all mesh really well together, which is important. Sometimes you got guys that you might be a little bit too competitive with, so or the ego gets in the way or things like that. So getting a good group together is good. We do a pre-World Championship camp in Lawrence, Kansas, of all places, every year. It's hot, windy, and humid, so preps you for Hawaii, I guess. And then typically I would go down to a race for a full Ironman. I try to get there about a week before. Sometimes a little bit longer, especially if it's if it's like Ironman Texas and I've been training in my garage all winter. I want to get down there a little bit earlier to have a little bit more time outside. And then coach usually comes in the day before the race, and then I've got a team of sponsors that work to make sure that I have all the equipment and everything sorted that I need. And I always enjoy the Ironman races the best because it takes a lot of stress away. Typically, like, my bike sponsor is there at the expo, so I'm able to just drop my bike off with them and make sure it, otherwise I'm the mechanic, and I trust them a lot more.
Is in thinking of that, I mean, you've got several coaches. Obviously, I'm assuming they're not doing it for free.
Right.
I know you mentioned early on, like, this isn't the sport if you're looking to make the $20 million Nike deals. I mean, how do you make that work? Just like from a realistic standpoint of anybody out there, like, oh, I'd love to do that for a living. I mean, most people are probably thinking that's fucking crazy, but I am curious, like, the realist in me and businessman entrepreneur is thinking, like, how the fuck do you make that work? I mean, that's a pretty financially intensive sport with a number of coaches. Like how do you make money doing that?
Yeah, it's tough, especially this year when we're not racing. It's definitely been a strain. You got to be smart, and you never know when that's going to happen. Whether it's because of a virus, or you get injured, or you have an injury and you go long blocks. So you always have to have a rainy day fund. But yeah, I mean the sponsor support is really important. But you got to perform on race day, and that's what it boils down to. And the sponsors kind of make it so you can do it. Or so you can do it at a even cost typically, but we definitely rely on the race results to to be able to fund everything else. And I did start the coaching business with my background. I thought it was a pretty good fit, but that has taken a lot of the pressure off in terms of performance, because I do have some level of income coming in from that, which has definitely helped. And as my profile's grown a little bit more, the coaching business has gone a little bit better, and so it just takes a little bit more of the pressure off. And
with the coaching business, do you ever fuck with your clients and when they say, hey, I'm having trouble with this, you just say, just go faster? Do you ever just fuck with them like that, or no?
You can play around with some of them. Some of them. You got to learn who you're working with, and
welcome to life. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Just like any other job, some people you can mess with at work, and others you can't.
Some people have no fucking tolerance for it. I got you. You talked a little bit about getting ready for Kona, and even a little while ago talking about didn't really respect the sport, do your research on it. How big of a difference is there, all the races that you've done, and then when you go to the World Championships, like, is there just a tension that you just feel there that just trumps everything else?
Yeah, for sure. That's the race that I haven't mastered yet, for sure.
But that one historically kicks everybody in the nuts more than most, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's not many people that show up there right away being successful, and my best executed race there was my first time there as an amateur, and I think it was because I had no idea and wasn't susceptible to the pressure, because I just had no clue.
Yeah, didn't realize how big the moment was.
Yeah, exactly. And then you learn more, and you can put a little bit too much pressure on yourself. And I've had a series of unfortunate events there. The second year I was there as an amateur, I ended up with 3 flat tires, and I only had 2 tubes to fix, and so I waited on the side of the road for almost 25 minutes for somebody to give me a tube after the third one. And my goal that race was to win the amateur division, and I was in a position to do that, and then I wasn't. And so it was just watching all the work that and that goal just go away. But I don't think I would have taken my pro card if that went to happen. Yeah, because I took my pro card the next day so I could race at Ironman Arizona 6 weeks later. You have to sign up months in advance as an amateur. As a pro, you can sign up 3 weeks in advance. And so I planned on just racing as the pro just so I could prove myself that I had the fitness that I thought I did.
Yeah. Would you say that the course at Kona is any more difficult or challenging? Or?
Yeah, for sure. Obviously the heat and the humidity play a huge factor. Nutrition is so important there. And, that's the fourth discipline of triathlon. The ocean swim can be flat or it can be choppy. And then you always get some pretty bad crosswinds, especially coming down the volcano out of Hawaii.
Yeah. Did you crash once there?
I did, yeah, in 2015. So my first year there as a pro, it was a mile into the bike. I was using a prototype stem, so it was a component on the bike, not the bike itself, but it just folded, and so I was going down a hill, had no brakes, and ended up taking out a police officer. Probably saved me from significant injury.
Oh, sure.
It was a hard corner at the bottom, and I just ran straight into him. My bike went into a little lava wall that they have there, and it just kind of...
Was it just him, or was he in a cruiser?
No, it was just him. He was there
sure.
kind
Did
of...
you fuck him up?
Unfortunately, yeah. He wasn't long-term badly hurt, but he wasn't very happy, and I put a pretty big bruise on his thigh, and I think he was getting married the next week, and he had to go down the aisle in a wheelchair.
Holy shit!
I've actually had a contact with him a couple times. He was thankfully really good about it. I think he realized that if I went to ran into him, it was going to be a bad deal.
Yeah. So you probably saved your life or close to it.
Yeah.
Have you had other bad crashes? And one thing, again, my experience with bike races is pretty limited to watching either Ragbri in Iowa, which I've never done. Which most people aren't going to have any idea what that is, but you should. It's a pretty epic fucking border-to-border race or event in Iowa every summer. But it was watching Tour de France or Tour de Spain or whatever, and seeing some of the fucking crashes that they have. I'm assuming a 112-mile bike, like there's probably some epic crashes that are every bit as gnarly as those, right?
Yeah, I mean, those are compounded because you have so many people riding in a group, so they happen much more frequently, and they're all within inches of each other. We're spaced out a little bit, so you've got some reaction time. I've crashed one other time in a race. Well, in Australia, I crashed out of that race, but it wasn't near the injury that I had at Kona. But there's been some, a few bad accidents, a lot of training. You hear about partners getting, or fellow competitors getting hit by a semi or, things like that. And that happens all too often, especially now when everybody's on their phone all the time. And like we're on country roads, that we think are quiet, but the cars think they're quiet, and so they're not paying as much attention either. So
yeah, it's rough. During the races, do you ever talk shit with each other, like during the race, like you pass somebody, like that's right, fucking chump, or anything like that?
I typically don't. There's some guys that do.
What kind of shit do they say? I'm curious.
You'd have to ask Andrew. He's the one that. No. There's some, like I said, there's some friendly rivalries, but most of the cool thing about the sport is unless you've ever tested positive, everybody's kind of, at least outside of the race, they're pretty cordial. Yeah. It's a small field. We know each other. We race each other over and over again. There's a couple guys that that hate each other for one reason or another. Yeah. Usually one guy slept with another guy's girlfriend or whatever. But that it's harder to let that thing go than just beating somebody at a race.
Yeah. You mentioned testing positive. So if somebody tests positives, then that's when they're getting the real motherfucker treatment.
Yeah, I mean, so when I won the last championship in Texas, the guy that got second had tested positive, and he was a guy from Russia, tested positive multiple times in 1 year, but somehow on a technicality got away with it. But everybody knows that he tested positive, and so a couple of the guys up at the awards just sat there, and you kind of shake everybody's hand, and he just sat there trying to shake one of the guys' hands and just sit there, not happening in front of the entire crowd, and then. Yeah. There's some things like that go on. There's not, unfortunately, enough recourse, I think. Obviously you can get a time ban, but that for some people, if that's not a good enough deterrent, hopefully some people think the public shaming is a part of it.
Well, yeah, it probably is more effective. I am curious. I mean, how stringent are they post race? I mean, what is it? Blood and urine or?
It depends on the race. So like Kona, you get blood at the race course within the week. So they'll either show up randomly at your house or at wherever you're staying, or you go when you register. So at some point you're getting blood, and then urine after the race if you're in the money. Most races afterwards, it's immediately you have to go into drug testing if you're in the top 5 or. And then again, they're going to do out of competition testing whenever they want. So you have to give a 24-hour or a 1 hour period every day where this is where I'm going to be, and they can show up any day that they would like to.
No shit.
Yep.
Would you say that performance enhancing drugs are anywhere near at the same level they are at professional cycling? Like, is there?
No, I don't think it's at that level by any means. There's a lot more money in cycling, and the culture just was much more accepting of it early on. Cycling's evolution is much farther. Triathlon's a younger sport, and so I think it just hasn't quite gotten to that extent. I hope it hasn't. Maybe I'm naive, but I choose to believe that it's not that bad. There's definitely some of it going on, but I always try to think, for me, the mentality has to be that this person's clean because he's allowed to race me.
Yeah.
And if I think, oh, he's dirty and I'm racing, and then it just kind of gets in your head, how do you be the guy that is cheating?
Yeah. Well, so I'm curious, like, is there instances where somebody is so superior to you where you're like, that guy's got to be, like, there's no way he's fucking clean?
I don't if the performances are consistent, I don't look at it that way. If all of a sudden out of the blue someone goes from being here to being way up here in all three disciplines, that's kind of what the trigger would be for me. But there's guys that have been at the top of the sport. Jan Frodeno's been multiple world champion. He was an Olympic gold medalist in a shorter distance, and he's been world champion at half and full. So I mean, he's been doing it his whole life. He's just good.
Yeah.
I 100% hope he's clean because he's been so dominant.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'm curious, and I know, you don't speak for the whole sport, but, is there an element of, guys that are just also really good at not getting caught?
Yeah. I mean, Lance passed how many drug tests, right? Like, to some extent, it's an IQ test as much as anything else. If you want to do it, you probably could.
Yeah.
That's an unfortunate truth, is that the doping control is always reacting to what's new, and if people want to be on the if they want to do it, they can be doing it one step ahead.
So it's a bit of a cat and mouse.
A bit, yeah.
But I mean, it probably is safe to ascertain that there's at least some of it in the sport, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of it in the age group ranks, which is baffling.
Yeah.
But yeah, they every year there's a couple age group guys that test positive for some of it's EPO, other thing, a lot of it is like a testosterone pack or something like that. And
yeah, so with that, like with TRT, right? I mean, is there like a limit where, hey, if your testosterone is above a certain number, I mean, how do they
if you're gonna compete at the World Championships, you cannot be taking any. There's no exemption.
But I mean, I guess, excuse my ignorance as to how they test it, but how would they know, I guess?
It would typically come with a carrier, so they can find the carrier.
I gotcha. All right, that's fascinating stuff for sure. How much longer do you anticipate that you'll still do it? Or, I mean, I'm sure some of it is when I just can tell I can't do it at the level I need to. Is that kind of the answer? Or what
when the process isn't fun. Like, this year proves more than anything is you have to enjoy the process, because we're not getting the payoff or the, emotional payoff even from the race.
Yeah.
So, it's a lot of work, and, your body's sore and hurting, and I love that part of it, and I still love, preparing for workouts even right now. And so that part of it is really fun to me. And, I think I stole that from Peyton Manning. He's I'll know when it's time to hang it up, when the preparation process is no longer fun, because then I can't be who I want to be. And, maybe, no one wants to, be hanging on longer than, to go downhill, but eventually it's going to happen. And, if I'm still enjoying it and still able to make it viable, then I hope to be able to still do it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. In terms of the races itself, I guess the last question, and I'll move into some of the coaching stuff. Are there times where you just either you daydream weird shit, you hallucinate? Because I know, like in Hell Week, you get to a certain level of fatigue and tiredness, which I know, you guys aren't up for 6 days, but is there an element of that where you daydream really crazy weird shit, or see things, or your mind plays tricks on you?
If I'm 100% conscious, especially on the run, on the bike, you have to be 100% focused. Otherwise, something's going to go wrong, or you're going to get, lose the pack or something like that. But if I'm 100% focused and like within my thoughts during a run, I probably am having a bad day. Yeah. There's so many sections of runs, especially after 15 miles or so, where it's just you're not there. Like you're just you kind of have to leave because the body hurts so bad you don't want to be there. And I don't think I've ever hallucinated per se, but I definitely don't remember large sections of some races.
Yeah.
And you just have to kind of shut part of your brain off and leave.
Like when your wife's talking.
Never.
Is there anything that sticks out in your mind as like the craziest thing you thought about, during a race or even training where you had to push yourself and your mind fucking wanders? Anything step out, or is it mostly not remembering shit?
Yeah, nothing too terribly crazy. When I was, during a lot of my run workouts, I'm trying to put myself in the next race, and that's why I love doing races that I've done before, because I can visualize very specifically different points of the race, and so I try to put myself there. And then in the race, it's just try to put myself anywhere that doesn't hurt at the end, and so that nothing terribly weird. Every now and then I'm all of a sudden like on the wrestling mat again in the middle of a workout, and it's kind of always interesting to see what match you go back to.
Yeah, that's interesting. Any thoughts of food, or are you ever hungry during a race like that?
No. In a full, I typically can't eat for a couple hours at least afterwards. Your stomach's just kind of
jumbled.
Yeah, I mean, I'm taking in 500 calories an hour of fluid, and typically 3 bottles an hour drinking as well, and so that's all just pretty much raw sugar. And so it takes a toll on the gut. You have to train the gut to handle that a little bit. And I look forward to when I'm running, I look forward to getting to the next aid station, because something cold's going to be there. Typically.
With the drinks, do you ever use like the goos and like the gel type stuff, or is it always?
That's come so far in technology, and the traditional gels that come in those little packs, I just haven't been able to stomach those. But I'm actually, one of the fun things that I've been able to do with some of the sponsors is use the education that I've developed over the last, or that I spent 8 years paying for, to kind of help create some products. And so I've been able to help on the research side of things with the products that I'm using, and there's some fun things in the pipeline there.
Well, that's cool. In terms of like electrolytes, I know you said it's pretty much all sugar. Are you guys putting, the potassium, sodium, magnesium?
Of course. Yeah.
And is there a product or two that kind of stand out as being, just for your average everyday asshole like me, that, like I work out in my garage, which this time of year in Texas is a motherfucker. And, an hour-long hard weight session will fuck you up if you don't prepare for it and recover from it legitimately. I like the Onnit mineral electrolytes. Tend to work well for trying to rehydrate. There's a couple other brands I've tried. Is there something that sticks out in your mind?
There's a number of products like that on the market, and nutrition is such an individualized thing. I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but I've been working with First Endurance for so long. They have I use theirs as a rehydrate. It's you can get up to a gram of salt in a bottle easily. But there's a bunch of others that are I think Base Nutrition is basically, that's their whole product line, is they're a very low calorie drink. Scratch is another one that are kind of more, at least marketed towards the endurance athletes, but a lot of the people in the CrossFit setting are starting to flock towards that type of product because it's a low calorie.
Is the company that you work with, does that have a lot of sugar in it?
It can. So like I said, I'm trying to get 500 calories an hour on the bike with that alone, and I'm doing that, and I'll mix water bottles that are like a sludge, 1,200 calories, and I start with 3 on the bike and go through those. But the good thing about it is you can vary the strength. So mixed at normal strength, it'd be like 100 calories a bottle.
I gotcha. The lower calorie ones were Scratch, you said?
Yeah, that's one.
What was the other one?
Base.
Yep. Just check those out. Like I said, I'm always trying to rehydrate fairly quick, because it does fucking hammer me pretty hard doing that this time of year. But last question on races, just generally speaking, is there a craziest thing you've seen during a race where you're just like, Holy shit! Did that really just happen?
I was running in Ironman, Texas, and all of a sudden, two bear heads in Speedos, guys in Speedo and a bear head were chasing me.
No shit.
Yeah.
Fucking Texas.
Yeah, gotta love it. I think I knew who they were. Yeah, that course, there's so many good things about that course. There's a section where Trash Can Jesus always stands, this guy dressed as Jesus, and right next to him is always a guy with a fake 4-foot member that'll chase you around and try to hit you. It helps pass the time, I guess. It's a 3-loop course, so it gives you something to look forward to every loop.
Well, I mean, to do this for a living and to do these races, you got to be a little off. So I can, it's only safe to assume that it attracts people that are a little fucking squirrely.
For sure. I mean, you're spending a lot of time training on your own, and you've got to be interesting, otherwise you just get bored.
Yeah. Would you say that a large percentage of the athletes are introverts?
Actually, I think a big percent come to it for the social aspect, whether it's through the clubs and the teams. The training is a social thing, and the masters swim groups and group rides on Saturday, and they'll get together for run and a coffee afterwards and stuff like that. So, the majority of the people that I work with typically want a social component as part of it, and that's often done through social media, but with the way that I have to do it, since it's mostly remote coaching, but it's you see other people that are wearing the same kit as you connect at the race and
say, that's a nice bike you got there, that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
What do you listen to music when you train?
I listen to books typically.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I've never not ever been big into music while I'm training. But yeah.
Is there? I mean, to me, it would be hard to really pay attention to
it has to be a really simple-minded,
like Dr. Seuss.
Yeah. I went through like all of James Patterson, for example. Very simple plots that you figure out early on, but you're gonna miss half of it. But
but it's still entertaining.
Yeah, when you're out on a 6-hour ride by yourself.
Yeah. No, I gotcha. All right, so from a coaching standpoint, all sports I think have taught us that just because you're a great athlete does not mean you're a good coach, and vice versa. Some of the best coaches in the world were not that good at whatever sport they're coaching in. Talk a little bit about that and how your experience racing, has helped shape that, and what's ultimately helped you be successful coaching such a tough sport.
Yeah, I mean, coaching for me was a good fit. Just one, the education behind it. And the fact that I was a professor before, when I left that, I didn't miss the grading or the university politics or any of that crap, but I missed being in front of the classroom. I really enjoyed that. And so the coaching kind of filled that void. Plus, there's not a lot of triathletes. I think my wife and I are the only two in Storm Lake. So I don't really have anybody to kind of share that with beyond my wife. And, sometimes when you just need somebody else to talk to, and when the dog starts talking back to you, you got to start to worry a little bit. But yeah, so I mean, I think the education part helps. The experiences that I've had when racing, the mistakes that I've made, I've made a lot. I came to the sport, I was very raw. I didn't come up through the ranks. It was just a very quick transition. And so I made a lot of mistakes and still make a few and try to learn from those. And then, I've had some really good coaches in my corner as well that have helped me, and I think we learned together pretty well, and I've definitely learned a lot. Coach Bottrell, my bike coach, has taught me so much about aerodynamics, and I can be better myself because of what I've learned from him. And Coach Julie has taught me a lot. Coach Kevin, my strength coach, has taught me a lot as well.
Is there something that sticks out in your mind, both and when looking for a coach and also self-evaluating, trying to be the best coach you can, that sticks out as saying what makes a good coach? Yeah,
the coach has to fit what you need as an athlete, especially in an individual sport. There's some coaches out there that have been very successful. I interviewed with one coach. Like, I flew out, spent quite a bit of money to fly out last minute to basically give a planned on a 2-week trial. Is this going to work? And he sent me home on the first day. He's like, I don't want to work with you.
Oh shit.
Yeah. I
Tell
was
him to fuck off.
No. Well, I just didn't, that I was at a tough point, and then that happened. And, again, at that point, you're so narrow-minded, like my world's ending. What just happened? I wanted to work with this guy, I thought. And
do you know why he didn't want to work with you?
yeah, I don't. He just said, yeah, this isn't going to work.
Oh, shit.
And that was it. And he's like, you can leave. And off I went. And in the end, that was the best thing that happened to me, because, I ended up, instead of flying home, I flew to Denver to stay with my agent for a day, just to just try to just get away. And she had set up to have Coach Julie there, and we went on a ride, and it just was a good fit.
Yeah.
And so, those types of situations can kind of lead to a good thing every now and then. It's like one of those, okay, God, this is where I'm supposed to be, not there. I get it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, so in terms of being a good coach, you got to listen. The sport can be very technical. And I've had coaches that rely highly on the technical side of things, and then others that more on the qualitative, and each athlete kind of is drawn to a little bit of a different side of that. And so it's just figuring out what the athlete needs, and you can't be a one size fits all. You got to kind of, I coach different people different ways.
Yeah. Again, with what I do, there's a lot of parallels between coaching and dog training. That same way is that, I tell people this all the time, and I think it would apply with coaching as well. It doesn't matter what I think or even what I perceive. What matters is how they perceive it. And if they don't understand it, or they're not motivated by it or whatever, then that's you've got to adapt to them. And dogs, unfortunately, make it even harder, because you can't explain a fucking thing to them. Or you can, but they're not going to understand it.
I've definitely, my dog's definitely made me better.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially on the patient side of things.
Yeah, no doubt. Do you have kind of a mission statement or a mantra, or like a 30-second elevator pitch in terms of your business that you kind of adhere to?
Yeah, I mean, my coaching has tried to be, backed by science. Number one, that's who I am, as in training. But it's also using the qualitative feedback that I get, and then the experiences that I've had to build the best programs that I can for the individual. Yeah.
What do you want people to leave this conversation understanding about you and the sport?
The sport itself is great if you have the right mindset, but it can become very consuming. And I think I said it once earlier on. It's just, you got to know why you're there. I've had a lot of talent that I've worked with. I had one guy that was just dead set on a specific time goal, and that was all that fueled his training, was getting that one time goal. And it turned out to be, on race day, it was like 110 degrees and windy, and he missed his time goal by like 2 minutes or something like that. Quit the sport. Oh, he was devastated. Wow. And it's just like, it can be, all consuming. And so, if it's your hobby, you got to treat it as your hobby. If it's, and it's just, knowing what it is that fuels you, and keeping that, and not letting it stray too far away from there.
Yeah. Amen. Well, it's a fascinating lifestyle. It's neat to be able to sit down with somebody who's done it at that level, because I know, I was a fan of triathlons growing up. I did a half back when I was in my early 20s. That's the most I've ever done, and I did it one time, and it was fucking miserable. I hated it. I was always, a good swimmer and a pretty good runner, pretty average on the bike. But for me, the hardest part with swimming was growing up in Iowa in a swimming pool. Was that now going out into open water? That's where I was swimming twice as far as the guys that were good at guiding and navigating. Is that that's what really separates, I think, on the swim when you're in open water, is knowing how to guide.
Yep.
But it's always fascinated me, the mentality that it takes to compete at this level in any sport, but especially something where that competition is lasting 7 or 8 hours. I mean, it's a remarkable testament to how mentally tough all you guys are, and my hat's off to you. I think it's really neat what you've done, what you continue to do, and have turned that into a successful business. Where can people find you in terms of social media, and if they want to get into being a client of yours, et cetera?
Yeah, I try to keep it easy. All my social media stuff's Matt Hanson Racing for the racing side of things, it's Matt Hanson Tri for my personal side, and then Matt Hanson Racing for the coaching side of things. So that's website, and then Facebook, Instagram.
Okay. And so if people want to enlist your services, just go there and set up a consult.
Yeah. Or just send me a message anyway. I'm pretty flexible.
All right. One question: why Storm Lake? Like, would it benefit you to move somewhere that's a little more?
Yeah, I get asked that one a lot. It started there. My wife and I both had a job there, and my wife still works at the university there, and so they've treated her well, and so that's where we're at. And I do have to travel a bit more, especially during the winter. I go down to Florida, Claremont, and train there for a little bit, and travel to meet with other people every now and then. But I don't mind getting out the door, executing my training, and just kind of ticking the boxes.
Yeah. Once you hang up, pro level competition, do you think you'll just transition into just strictly coaching? That'll be
that's the goal. Obviously a little bit of that depends on how the rest of the career goes. Yeah. I hope I have a name that's relevant enough. I've been fortunate enough to build the coaching business. I think we got 12 coaches right now that are working with me, and so that's where I want to be. Maybe return to the classroom. I don't ever anticipate going back full time. Maybe do an adjunct thing if anybody wants me. But
Professor Hanson.
That I think that ship has sailed.
Yeah, amen. Well, I can't thank you enough for coming down here and taking time out of which I know is a busy schedule of yours to share all this stuff with us and the listener. It's been a fascinating talk and really neat shit you have going on. I love what you're doing and hope you keep it up.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. For you, the listener, feel free to choke yourself, because I haven't said that yet today. And more than anything, I want to thank our guest, Matt Hanson. Go check him out. If there's any element of your life or people that that need professional coaching, he's a hell of a good guy to go to. So check him out. I'd like to take a quick second to shout out and thank our sponsor for today's podcast, Origin Labs and Jocko Fuel. Jocko Fuel is a great product. He's got a ton of products actually within the Jocko Fuel line. The guests and I enjoy them on the show. And outside, I take a lot of the supplements. I've got some of the Origin Lab jeans, boots, gis, and it's just all around American industry. They do a fantastic job really re-revolutionizing American industry from start to finish. It's all American made, all American sourced. Everything start to finish is made right there in-house. And they really do a phenomenal job creating the products and fulfilling the whole ball of wax. They've been a huge supporter of the Mic Drop podcast for a while now, and I really can't thank Jocko Fuel and Origin Labs enough for the job that they do for us, and so thank you to you guys. I'd also like to say thank you to our other sponsor, Resilience Premium CBD. Resilience is excited to offer all Mic Drop listeners a 20% off discount on all products for 2 weeks from when this podcast is live, using the discount code MICDROP at checkout. That's 2 words, MICDROP at checkout. I'd also like to say that Resilience is a great company that works in conjunction with Trico CBD, and all military veterans and first responders receive 35% off. Yes, that's 35% off for all military veterans and first responders, and that's through the Military and First Responders program. You just have to sign up at resilientcbd.com/military first responders discount. In terms of about Resilience, generally speaking, it's a premium CBD that I use. Again, it works in conjunction with the Tricos brand for the everyday athlete. That's www.resilientcbd.com. And Resilience was really born with the founders who are military veterans as well, personally experienced the effects and impact that CBD had on their own mental and physical obstacles. Their focus was sharper, mental stress was calmed, fitness stamina increased, and their bodies felt less pain, inflammation after super intense workouts. A lot of times most people and people are able to either wean off entirely or significantly reduce pain management therapy. This is a shared vision among the founders that this incredible supplement had not only changed their lives, but had the power to provide unbelievable benefits to family, friends, athletes, fellow veterans, and ultimately the entire fitness community. So big shout out to Resilience for their product as well as the Trico stuff. We sure appreciate their support. More than anything, I appreciate your guys' attention and your loyalty to the show and continuing to listen episode after episode. We try to bring you a variety of interesting guests, and I'm really pleased with being able to bring you Matt today to be able to share these experiences. So appreciate your support, appreciate you listening, and until next time, this is Mike Drop.